The Warhammer universe has a lot of elite warriors. Everyone and their mother and brother thinks they're the top dog, the true champions of the mortal and immortal realms. But when it comes to the Riders of the Dead, the Knights of Bloodkeep are certainly at the pinnacle, and they have the egos to match. So perhaps it's time for the Knights of Morr to knock them down a peg or two. After all, that's what they do. For more than 1,000 years, they have led their holy war against the undead, alongside the Reichsguard and other chapter houses of the Empire, standing silent sentinel over the graves of the fallen. Encased in obsidian armor, they would consider themselves the equal of any vampire or knight of chaos. Today, we'll put that to the test. Remember that you are but dust. Remember that all men must die, and dying comes easy when you're up against Blood Knights, especially on SFO Grimhammer, where they are well and truly special. These dudes are freaks. Crazy regen when in melee from the Hunger, 550 HP per model, 20 models, 30 bonus for slorage, magical attacks, and almost 100 charge bonus when Frenzy is active. They are a problem, which is why we built an entire army centered around them. They are the hammer, and the shambling masses shall be the anvil. Pretty hard to go wrong with elite cavalry like that, one of the best free LC units in the history of mortal empires. And we even got some dismounted Blood Knights here to help anchor that terrible Zombo battle line. 108 weapon strength, 25 bonus versus infantry, 85 melee attack against other foot troops. They've got that whole we're better than you and we know it swagger down pat. Stay out of their way. And of course, a bunch of skelly boys and zombies to help bolster the front engagement. But across the battlefield march the armies of the Empire, led by a Grand Master of the Knights of Morr. He's a more than capable duelist, but where he really excels is in his support abilities. And Imperial Tactics is the big kahuna that all Empire Lords share. This will turn a middling unit into a complete powerhouse, and turns the Knights of Morr into brick walls in defense. That plus 25 melee defense is a huge deal, especially for a unit that already has that much armor. Combine that with Flow of Battle, Indomitable, and the Crown of Command for Unbreakable, and a Grand Master will make sure his troops get the most out of pretty much any cavalry engagement they could be thrown into, and they will need it for sure. Next to him, of course, are the Templar Knights of the Dead, who can remove immune to psychology from enemy units and cause them to flee in terror, which is really good against factions that cause a lot of that, like Chaos. But the issue, of course, is that the undead can't rout anyway, so they're immune to that element, but they'll still have a hard time getting through all that armor and melee defense of the Knights of Morr. Just a solid, well-rounded elite unit with the best pun ever on their banners. Memento Mori? Yeah, that's a pretty good. They're joined by dismounted Reichsguard, the Imperial Foot, which are pretty straightforward tanky sword infantry with good stats and armor values. They have a vigor replenishment and an AoE around them. They're kind of supportish, but not really. They're more just supposed to hold the line, and they won't do tons of killing, but they'll survive super well. And a front rank of Wolfkin, which are just a really good unit for the price point. Unbreakable, almost 20,000 HP, and their bleed contact effect combined with almost 50 melee attack means they will mortis drain the life from anything they're fighting. And they'll always fight to the end. That's a problem when you're fighting against zombies and skeletons. Or if you are zombies and skeletons, you don't want to be fighting Wolfkin. There's a Grey Wizard with Blast, Pit of Shades, Mind Razor, and Enfeebling Foe, but Pit of Shades is the big one. We'll talk about its importance as this battle progresses. And finally, there's an Imperial Captain mounted on a Demigryph, which he should really have in vanilla. Not sure why that hasn't happened yet, but he's also a support character with Imperial Tactics, so even though in a straight-up fight, the Knights of Morr won't beat Blood Knights, and are certainly inferior on a per-model basis, with all their buffs headed their way, it should be a much more even engagement if the Imperial Captain and the Knight of Morr Grand Master are doing what they're supposed to be doing. He looks awesome on top of the burb, for sure. Now, as the shambling masses and the grizzled, bedraggled faces of the Wolfkin meet in close quarters combat, it's very clear the vampire counts are going to rely heavily on their Blood Knights here. Those 3 units of cavalry and the 1 unit of dismounted Blood Knights are really the linchpin of the entire build. Skelly boys and zombies aren't going to do anything but maybe hold the line, and they'll even have a difficult time doing that against Wolfkin because of their high melee attack and that bleed contact effect that will quickly see them drain the life from all these meat shields. So if you're the Blood Knights, you want to keep them high and tight together in a death ball and just bounce from unit to unit, killing it off quickly with all that AP and bonus for large, and hopefully get a good cavalry engagement that will see them destroy the Demigryph Knights and the Knights of Morr. Now the issue with that is that Pit of Shades completely denies the Blood Knights the ability to blob up and use their local superiority. If they want to get all together in a death ball, a Pit of Shades is going to wreck them. It may not kill models, but it'll hurt real bad. So it's kind of a catch-22 here for the vampire counts at the start. They want to get in, kill off the infantry, kill off the cavalry, do whatever they can to eliminate the most important units first as a zombie summon comes behind the Wolfkin. But you can see the front line already starting to break pretty quick from that bleed contact effect, and the Blood Knights have to get in, but now this is where that Pit of Shades can come into play. The dismounted Reichsguard are holding the line well for now against the Skeleton Warriors and the dismounted Blood Knights, but as they charge in and do some grinding in CQB, that's where the vortexes can start coming down. And Reichsguard, well, they're great warriors, but there's levels to this, and they ain't no Blood Knights. I tell you what, brother, decaps start rolling in, and there aren't many things more demoralizing than watching your friends get their heads chopped off all around you. Where the Foot Knights of Bloodkeep charge, the Empire infantry will quickly crumble soon after. But here comes the Pit of Shades, and that's going to be Value City for the Shadows caster. He'll make his value back in one cast, and that big suck, which prevents horses from disengaging by pulling them back towards the center of the spell, will ensure it does maximum damage. Now, it's not going to kill models. Both Blood Knight units will leave that with all 20 of their models remaining. And of course, Invocation of Nehek could bring those back from the dead anyway, but it means they have to take some precious time out of combat to lick their wounds. And meanwhile, the Knights of Morr and Demigryphs and even the Wolfkin are having a field day in the center. They're quickly breaking through the skeleton and zombie front line. Now, the Blood Dragon Lord and the rest of the Blood Knights are disengaging, coming back and trying to get that full value Invocation of Nehek, and this is probably the biggest advantage the Undead have in this battle, because the Empire doesn't have any healing whatsoever. They have Imperial Tactics, which gives melee defense and kind of works similarly to a heal in that it keeps units alive, but once the Knights of Morr start dropping, they're gone for good. Knights of Bloodkeep don't have that problem, and that was a maximum value Nehek for sure. Hit both the damaged Blood Knights and the dismounted Blood Knights as well, and will get them healed up quite nicely. And that's how the vampires are going to use their magic in this one. They do have Von Hall's Danse Macabre, which will give plus 35 melee attack and more speed, which could be very useful in the cavalry engagements, but most of their spells are defensive in nature. Zombie summons to block charges, heals, that kind of thing. It's interesting because the Imperials are the ones with the aggressive magic in this one, and so far, their cavalry blob, it's a big threat to the Undead for sure. They've broken through and they're moving into the rear lines now, but that'll create some opportunity, some opening lanes for the Undead to get in and cause some havoc. And for now, they're focusing on the infantry. The Wolfkin are posing, they're pretty much hitting above their weight class right now. They're doing a great job of tar pitting, and this is why you want to bring unbreakable troops against the Undead. You don't have to worry about their fear or terror at all. And meanwhile, you're just bleeding away all their models, draining the HP away from the zombies and from the skeletons. Now, the cavalry that got into the rear, they are about to be harried by the fell bats, blocking their charges up, stuffing them up. And the Blood Knights realize at this point they have to go in and deal with the threat posed by the Knights of Morr and the Demigryph Knights. The cavalry engagement will be underway in earnest here. Memento Mori banners flashing in the sunlight. And in a straight-up cav fight, Blood Knights will win. Now, they might not beat Demigryph Knights with halberds. They'll actually probably be pretty even in terms of cost efficiency, in terms of gold spent. They both got AP, bonus for large. They're very similar, but this is where the support characters make their money. Helm of Discord, Von Hall's Danse Macabre on the Vampire Count side, and of course, Imperial Tactics, Enfeebling Foe, and another Imperial Tactics from the Empire Captain coming in from the Empire side. So, lots of stuff going down here, lots of ways to manipulate one's stats and change the outcome of a scenario like this one. Enfeebling Foe is a big one that'll last a long time, that'll severely hamper the Blood Knights and what they want to do. Nice rear charge from Blood Knights over there, and you can see that the Undead do not want to get blobbed up here, and they don't want to get punished by another of those brutal Pit of Shades. So they spread their cavalry, they've let one of their Blood Knights go into the rear of the Empire line to get some hammer and anvils over there. But of course, the anvils are disappearing. Baltimore is a little bit in favor of the Imperials, but again, Blood Knights are the most elite units on the field, and they can heal. So as they disengage, and you do want to disengage in SFO when you heal stuff up, because you will take stat malices while that heal is active. Well, as they do that, they'll get healed up, and they can go elsewhere and cause havoc in other parts of the battlefield. Imperial Foot Reichsguard holding firm and resolute in the face of this fierce attack, and the Grey Wizard left on a bit of an island. If he's not careful, he could be eaten alive by the Vampire Elite. Empire needs him to continue this magical duel against the Blood Dragon Lord. Those enfeebling foes are invaluable in keeping mounted warfare between the two factions relatively even, but it looks like he is quick enough to escape out of what could have been a pretty sticky situation. An enfeebling foe going down as the Blood Knights retreat through their own infantry, and now they've completely spread the field. They want to allow these Knights of Morr and Demigryph Knights to over-pursue, get isolated, and then in the one-on-one engagements, the Blood Knights should be able to win. Lots of crumbling on the infantry side, but of course, the Blood Dragon Lord can always supplement those losses with some zombie summons of his own, and he's still got enough Winsome Magic to throw some healings the way of the Blood Knights as well. And you can see the Knights of Morr are pretty beaten up here. Demigryph Knights are looking healthy though, and this unit of Blood Knights might be in trouble. They are cut off from support. The Blood Dragon Lord is surrounded now, and the only way he's going to be able to survive is if he throws down some zombie summons himself and tries to escape. He needs bodies around him. Not the Mortis Engine, the Rigor Mortis Corpse Cart is being dueled by a Grey Wizard, and will probably lose that fight, but it'll be an agonizingly slow one. We'll check back on that in a second. Imperial attack is going down on the Demigryph Knights, and look at those stat lines, man. That is absurd. It is such a good single target buff for any unit, but especially for elite cavalry. Oh my god, it's a problem if you're the Vampire Counts trying to deal with Demigryph Knights that have 60 plus, 70 plus melee defense. Big charge coming in on the spears. Did not quite brace in time, but another enfeebling foe cutting down their stats. Invocation of Nehek on the disengaged Blood Knights on this side, and the Knights of Morr are perhaps over pursuing. Yeah, they smell blood in the water. Charge coming in, and instant rout for the Knights of Morr. That's what they need. That's what the Vampire Counts need to get back into this game. Isolate their cavalry, destroy the Knights of Morr, then bring those Demigryphs to heal in a cataclysmic final engagement, and two Knights of Morr skewered by a single Blood Knight lance. I wonder if they have AoE attacks. I think they might, because yeah, that was one attack that killed two models, which you don't typically see from cavalry. It was pretty badass looking. Nice charge coming in on the Wolfkin, but of course they'll hold firm and strong. Doesn't matter if you surround them, you gotta kill every single one of their number. Unbreakable and almost 20,000 HP it's annoying to deal with for sure. The Wolfkin holding, the Halberds holding, the Blood Dragon Lord is going to die here. He will crumble out. He is fully surrounded, and the zombie summons are not enough to save him. He could not disengage. He could not escape. The Demis and the Imperial Captain got him, and they got him good. That's a huge loss and might just put it out of reach for the Vampire Counts, but the Knights of Bloodkeep are not done yet. They have their own twisted code of chivalry, and they're all about mano-a-mano combat, baby. So they're going to look for the opportunity to charge in when they can and get as many kills as possible before this game is over. And the Imperial State troops that are cut off from the rest of their army, well, they will be the first to fall. Big charge coming in. Forget your bracing. It don't matter, playa. Just absolutely pancaking that unit and killing off the majority of their number. We're going to line it up for one more glorious final charge into the teeth of the Imperial Army. But yeah, this game is completely out of reach for the undead at this point. Fast forward a little bit, get a nice charge into the infantry, and then we'll break it down, analyze what happened, and discuss perhaps how the Vampire Counts could approach it in a different fight. But nice charge coming in on the dismounted Reichsguard, busting through the Wolfkin ranks, and then the Imperial Captain, the Grand Master of the Knights of Morr, and the remaining Demigryph Knights will countercharge, and it'll be Crumble City for the Blood Knights. So this was a tough one. Zach Bisane, as the Empire, played very well against my Vampire Counts. He handled it pretty much perfectly, and I think there were two things that really kind of turned this in his favor. One was simply army composition. I think that he had a great plan to deal with my Blood Knights here. And I think a lot of it revolved around the Wolfkin, actually, which is surprising considering they're the cheapest unit on the Empire side of the field. But they are amazing for clearing out Vampire Chaff quickly. That bleed contact effect, draining the life from the zombies and the skeletons, made them not useless, but it meant that they held out for a much shorter amount of time than they typically would. And the fact that they're unbreakable means that my fear and terror is completely irrelevant to the Imperial front line, which is typically one of the advantages the Vampire Counts have in this matchup, that you can manipulate their morale a little bit. You can't do that against Wolfkin, they're unbreakable. And they all got just absurd amounts of value, too. I mean, 2,000 damage value, 1,600 damage value, 380 kills, 270 kills, 290 kills. That wasn't just killing the zombies and skeletons. You don't get that much damage value doing that. They also did some damage to the Blood Knights, too. I would be very curious to see how much the bleed does to elite units like Blood Knights, but considering they have almost 50 melee attack, it seems like they must have been landing some attacks and dealing some DOT on the Vampire Elite as well. But the other thing was the Pit of Shades. That made it so that the Blood Knights didn't want to group up together and just take a cav fight, right? Because if you do, if you fight in the manner that Blood Knights like to, getting those 3 units together in a big death ball and just punching whatever you can, then the Pit of Shades is going to hit all 3 and it's going to generate insane value and your cavalry will just disappear. So they had to spread out, they had to go to different sides of the battlefield, but they spent a lot of time running around not engaging stuff to try to avoid bad engagements and not get Pit of Shaded and stuff. And I think that that spell kind of broke it wide open and made it so that the Empire Cavalry could take the engagements they wanted, while the Blood Knights couldn't quite do so. So I think if I was to re-tackle this army comp, I would probably not invest quite so much in the Blood Knights. Get some Graveguard that can just deal with the Wolfkin, clear them off the field quickly, and not get absolutely thrashed, because the fact that I lost my infantry engagement so heavily meant that the cavalry could then get into my rear and pretty much cause havoc wherever they felt like it. It was a difficult one for sure, but Zach played it really well, and the buffs with Imperial Tactics too, stacking that up from the Empire Captain and the Grand Master of the Knights of Morr, it was really well thought out. It meant that his Knights of Morr and his Dundergriff Knights were always fighting at peak performance, and they out-traded Helm of Discord and Von Hall's Danse Macabre, so really well played to the Empire, and hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next one. Indy Pride, signing out for now.